AVIOndemand.com. Automotive training you can receive anywhere, anytime. Your online training starts here.
Okay, so out of the top 10 trouble codes as rated by the state of Wisconsin for the federal EPA that tracks all these things for reasons for emissions failures, one of the most common ones that gives mechanics a lot of hard time in trying to diagnose is a P0420 code. P0420 code means bank 1 catalyst below threshold. Now, the most common cause for this is probably going to turn out to be a bad catalytic converter. But it could also be an exhaust leak somewhere in the system. It could even actually be an actual bad CAT sensor on the vehicle. So what do? Honestly, the easiest and most precise way I've ever found to diagnose this catalyst efficiency style code is going to be with that calculator that we talked about earlier. What I like about this calculator, before I had the calculator, yeah, you could measure the inlet temperatures and the outlet temperatures of the catalytic converter. You can do all the stuff that you've already heard about before. But let's put a different spin on this thing and let's actually use this diagnostic calculator, because what I like about it is it will not only tell me and confirm the fact I do need a catalytic converter, but it's going to tell me which one of those 3 precious metals are bad inside that converter. So I take my gas analyzer and I hook it up to the vehicle. When I take my gas analyzer and hook it up to the vehicle, I'm going to be getting out obviously the HC, the CO, the O2 and the CO2 readings, right? I can even pull out the NOx reading as well, so if it's a 5 gas. So I'm going to be getting those 5 readings and I'm going to plug them into my diagnostic calculator. Is going to give me a percentage as to what each one of those 3 areas of the catalytic converter is capable of doing, how much it's degraded, how good it is. So my HC calculator, my CO calculator, all that stuff is all being displayed for me, and obviously I can go ahead and say, okay, if my NOx reading is what's failing, if that's the part of the catalytic converter that's no longer doing its job, well, I know that that's the rhodium precious metal inside. If my HC and CO is what's causing this whole thing to go high and fail, that's the part that degraded in the converter, then I know my platinum and palladium in the converter is bad. Those are the 3 precious metals that make a 3-way CAT function the way how it's supposed to. Again, it's not really that type of class. AVI's got tons of programs on gas analysis. But what I like about it is I know for a fact how bad this converter is. I like to use this as another example as well. A lot of times on especially imports, if you put it on an aftermarket converter, that 420 code is fixed for a short period of time, but it's going to come back on probably in 6 months to a year, because if the factory converter costs $600 or $700 from the dealership and you call up your local parts store and they say, yeah, we got a universal one that you could put on there, it costs 80 bucks. Well, what do you think is the difference in price? It's the amount of the precious metals that they're putting in that catalytic converter. So it's not going to obviously have as much platinum, palladium, and rhodium in it. And you could see this and verify this with this little volumetric efficiency calculator. But again, if you don't happen to have this calculator, then obviously you can measure the inlet and outlet temperatures of the converter. And the way that you guys have tested for this code, if it's a bad converter like you have been for years in the past. So if I have an exhaust leak that's before the converter that it's actually acting as a venturi, every time I step on the gas and take my foot off the gas, a little bit of oxygen goes inside the exhaust stream, well, you could get a false code in there, which is telling you got a P0420 code. Well, and you might not even hear the exhaust leak because it only does it under deacceleration because it's sucking outside air in. Well, this calculator really shines in this area. No way of converter temperature testing or anything before that we've talked about can actually determine it. You'd have to either use an old-fashioned smoke machine and do it on every single car in the exhaust tailpipe to see if you have an exhaust leak, or this calculator has the ability to say, well, I'm getting some pirate air coming from someplace. So now you're going to have to go, they call it the exhaust oxygen dilution factor. So if I see that factor is extremely high, I'm going to say, hey, I'm sucking some outside air. So this is another quick go or no-go style test to tell me, hey, do I happen to have a bad converter for this 420 code?